who's back? I mean, you go to Mexico City, boy, you just took some time off. Look at the Chiefs have their two best performances with BK take some time off. I felt like there might have been some maybe some give up. Who knows? You know, the ebbs and flows of BK. Last time that BK avoided us after Mahomes gets injured, like how much has happened since we've last talked to Brandon Kiley? We went through Jameis. Jameis got benched. Mahomes got hurt. We went through the whole week of Mahomes being injured. They played the Texans. I had a bet. I dunked a guy in a water tank because he had the audacity to bet me that the Chiefs were going to lose at home.
And then can you imagine believing in the Texans? What a fraud.
I mean, I'm just trying, like, you know, one day you guys are going to trust my eyes. I'm telling you. Like, that was the part that was so disrespectful. It was not verbally. Like, I want to go back and watch these recordings when we were talking about this before the season. It's not just the words that you all use. It was the flipping just disregard that was written all over your face when discussing the Texans. Okay. All right.
I'm not going to lie. I was pretty disgusted when you were acting as if they weren't a threat. And I was like, what are you talking? Like, how could you possibly believe that? And then you couldn't have been more right. You could not have been more correct in your assessment.
I remember being very dismissive of Ron.
I mean, it was so
Ron used the correct term. It was disrespectful. Looking back at the time, I just thought it was accurate. Now it was disrespectful.
I mean, it was just pure, just rude laughter. Like it was. I wish it was more direct dismissive, but it was just like, okay, buddy. Like you're too close. Okay, buddy. And it was so rude. I'm telling you. I'm watching this. They're talking about all these skill guys, but the one thing that has to change is their offensive line, which sucked last year.
Ron kept saying, like, hey, interior defensive line and their offensive line. And guess what has sunk their season? Those two things. Literally exactly those two things. You asked what's changed, Ron, since the last time that we talked together on this podcast. The Chiefs have created 10 turnovers defensively over the course of 3 games. They have had Hollywood Brown, play a football game for them, which allows Xavier Worthy to become one of the best rookie receivers in the NFL this year suddenly. Like, he looks amazing. Joe Thuney is suddenly, like, a capable left tackle for this team. Chris Jones got hurt, and somehow the defensive line put together one of their best efforts I've seen from them of the season. A lot has happened. A lot has happened.
Yeah, since we last talked, Joe Thuney punched his ticket to the Hall of Fame. You think I'm laughing? I will make a case. This is just Joe Thuney has punched a ticket to Canton with what he has done. I've never seen this before in my life. But I will let's start here because I don't want to get off on a tangent of how I wanted to get that off my chest for a few weeks now, just of this, how dismissive you two were about this. But Wednesday, boy, did that work out Christmas. Did that work out well? Because, and we talked about this on the Daily Fix. Check it out every single day, 12 noon, right here on Foolish Club Media. But we talked about, like, hey, man, it's big because you want to be able to control what you want to do, right? Like, I don't know what Andy and Spags and the whole crew, how they're going to decide, how they're going to handle things, because they don't have to play another game meaningful until January 18th or 19th, right? They don't have to play. I would imagine, because it's the Chiefs, they will play them on a Sunday. So they don't have to play a game until January 19th of note. They just played Christmas. So the 25th to January 19th, they don't play a game that matters. So they put themselves in a position to determine however they want to do this with the injuries they have, with the nicks and bruises and just the guys they need to give rest, and guys like Steven Nelson, who still may be coming along, and whatever they're going to do with some of these other guys. Like they have a chance to, they put themselves in a position to do that. But the other big key was, BK, they have made, unless Lamar takes a dump all over himself, and Lord knows the Ravens team did it earlier this year in Cleveland. But if they can't handle that outfit of the Cleveland Browns, who are now giving DTR a shot, if they can't get it done, as long as they are able to beat them, they become the 3 seed. And it puts them in a place where the Chiefs don't ever have to play Buffalo and Baltimore to get there, right? The Chiefs have put themselves in a position where they only got to play 2 games to get to the Super Bowl. But now odds are they won't have to play both the Bills and the Ravens to get there, which I think are the 2 biggest tests in the AFC for them. And that was a real possibility going into Wednesday.
I don't think you could have scripted this any better. Like, Ron, if I told you just before the season, right, what is the ideal scenario for the Chiefs once they reach the postseason? Like, what does the bracket look like? Where are they at? Where are the Bills? Where are the Ravens? Who are the teams that they could potentially play on their path to the Super Bowl? What would that look like for you? The current path, the most likely path, is what you would have scripted in that scenario. Like, Chiefs number 1 seed, avoid playing in the first round entirely, use that as effectively a round 1 win, right? But without having to concern yourself with any potential injuries, use that as an extra week of rest. We've seen how important that can be. And on top of that, because they played this strange 3 games in 11 days scenario, you now have from Christmas Day on Wednesday, basically 3.5 weeks of rest up until their next game. Now, some have talked about like the rest versus rust situation. I think for this team specifically, I have zero concerns about the rust scenario just because they've been there, done that. Like, there's not a team that you have to worry about. And thankfully, even if they do come out a little slow against whoever it is that they play in that scenario, it's likely to be the Texans or the Steelers that they'll play.
So, or the Chargers.
Sure. One of those 3 teams. Maybe Broncos as well. Like, that's the quad group of teams that you could potentially play in that first round. Man, honestly, you can get away with a drive or 2 of you starting out a little bit slow against any of those teams that I just mentioned. I'm not sure that's the case against the Ravens or the Bills. And now, because of the way that everything went on Wednesday, you don't have to worry about that. You're hosting every game in the playoffs. You got 2 games that you have to worry about. One of it is like a 70% likelihood chance of winning in that first round now. And then you've got one of Buffalo or Baltimore coming to your house for the AFC Championship game. You couldn't have scripted this thing any better, man. They got their best case scenario.
Yeah, it couldn't have played out better for this team that somehow, through all of the injuries and everything they've overcome this season, has 1 loss. And they have played every team in the AFC playoff bracket already this season. So they've already seen all of these teams. Like, They already know how they can beat these teams, and they know that how they can prepare for them. And that's a huge advantage too. And then you start talking about the Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo preparation time, the opportunity to get healthy. And even in week 18, where I think Joe Thuney has obviously solidified himself as the Chiefs left tackle for the rest of this season. But you get an opportunity here to tinker around with things. Maybe you get DJ Humphries healthy in week 18 and you can see what you have in him there. And at the very least, he is a solid backup left tackle to Joe Thuney in the playoffs. And Wanya Morris can be your backup right tackle, which is where he's more suited to play anyways. This couldn't have gone better for a team that has overcome so much adversity this season and still managed to have the best record in the NFL and be the top overall seed in the playoffs.
Yeah, listen, I am not one, and I want to say this. I'm not saying that I fear or the Chiefs should fear anybody. Like, the silliness you were hearing. Oh, Chiefs don't want no parts of Orchard Park. Come on. Or this is becoming my new favorite. Ooh, Chiefs, last team they want to see in the field are the Bengals. Right? That's the last thing they want to know. It ain't none of that. Like, I'm just going to tell you, like, when I have experience with Kansas in college basketball, Jack, when Kansas is the 1 seed in that region, I hope they all lose. I hope they all lose. I hope I give me the we're gonna face the 9 seed and the 12 seed and the and the 10 seed, baby. I'll take it. Like I'm not about the now if you gotta go the hardest road travel, I don't know, like Miami and then at Buffalo and then at Baltimore and then the Niners. I mean, you do what you got to do, but no, if you telling me, hey man, you got a chance to roll against the Steelers, Texans, or Chargers or Broncos, and then let Buffalo and Baltimore fight it out. See, that was one of the sneaky things on that team that didn't make it is they had to hit Josh Allen and Burrow. Now we didn't know that Burrow was Burrow yet, but if we could rethink it, boy, come on, Ryan Tannehill, baby. Please, Titans win that game. We'd rather go play in Tennessee than have it. See, that was it. Now you look back at it, is that path meant you had to run through the number 2 and 3 quarterbacks in the game, right? And that divisional round game against Buffalo, probably took a little bit out of the Chiefs, even though they came out in the first half and beat the hell out of them. But like you just want the easier pass. And if you just look at these Super Bowl runs that the Chiefs have had, the first one, like the Texans, even though they got out to a 24-0 lead, man, that was not a team on your level, right? And then Tennessee, neither one of those teams were on your level, right? And then like I don't even remember in 20 who the first round team was they played. I can't even remember who it was before they beat Buffalo to get
Wasn't
to
it the Steelers?
It was the Steelers, I think.
Did they play the Steelers? I felt like
pretty
the Steelers.
Sure it was the Steelers.
It was a terrible game, and the Chiefs were in
Cleveland.
control.
It was Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking of the wrong run.
Oh, you're right. It was when Mahomes got knocked out.
Yeah,
it was.
Chad Henne had to come in.
Yeah, it was Cleveland, right? Like, I mean, like again, another that feels right. That feels a little different when you got to roll through the top 2 MVP candidates right before you get to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, you can miss me with the fear thing. It ain't no fear thing. It's just hey man, let's just be practical. Like
this probably is the closest comparison is probably that 2020 run that they went on, where they went up against Cleveland in the divisional round, because that was one of those seasons where it was like, hey, you basically just have a 1-game playoff to get to the Super Bowl. And it just becomes a question of who wins between the Chiefs and the Bills, 1 day, 1 game at home. And that's ultimately what they ended up doing. Now, the offensive line combusted and they had problems in the Super Bowl. But the point is, like, that's the scenario that you want. And to your point on that, Ron, I think there's some thought among maybe fans early on in this run of like, hey, you want the run to be legitimate. You don't want there to be any doubt in anybody's mind of like who the best team is, right? I don't care about that anymore. The Chiefs had that run last year. Like, they made it as hard as humanly possible on themselves. They did not get the bye. They went 11-6 in the regular season, looked horrible for like 14 weeks, 15 weeks out of that season, lost on Christmas Day, just looked miserable. And then suddenly had to go on the road for a couple of games against the Bills and the Ravens to beat the other 2 best teams, other 2 best quarterbacks in the AFC, and then beat the other best team that was representative of the NFC. Like, they have their really difficult, nearly impossible run. That's the one that people will point back to. Now it's about stacking up the rings. Now it's about what is the easiest path to give you the best chance possible to win yourself another ring. And that's what, for me at least, I can't speak for anybody else, I'm rooting for this year. And it appears that is what is likely to happen now that they have locked up that 1 seed.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, they accomplished that last season. Now you're just trying to do what no team in NFL history has done and setting up the easiest possible path to do that in a season where you've had so many significant injuries is the best strategy possible. The Chiefs have already proved anything that they ever would have needed to prove, that they are one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. Now they have a chance to prove that they might be the best team in NFL history if they can finish it off this season.
And speaking of that, knowing and maybe how they've arrived here, like, I think the narrative clearly is about to change on how people are talking about the Chiefs. And Serda, you brought up a team that may have a chance to be looked at as the best single season team of all time. And then if they finish this off, the greatest dynasty in NFL history. And then only having Michael Jordan's run or the Celtics run early. But in modern history, the Jordan Bulls, 6 and 8 years. That's the only 2 3-peats. That's the only thing that's running them, because obviously there's never been a 3-peat, and that would be 4 and 6 years. But man, this crew is 15-1 right now, going into a meaningless game in the last week of the season. And a lot of that stems from, since they lost to the Buffalo Bills, Patrick Mahomes has 12 total touchdowns and no interceptions. Since they've lost to the Bills. I don't know, what is that, 7 weeks? Since they've lost to the Bills.
6 weeks.
He has 12 touchdowns and no interceptions. I don't even know if he has any turnovers. It is insane. He has made, I don't know if he's made the decision, because you can't just say this is all because when the offensive line turned. Because now we've gotten to see the last 2 weeks when there's stability with the offensive line that, he can go and be nuts, Patrick Mahomes. But he has decided to flip into the MVP version of Patrick Mahomes since they've lost. And yes, he went through that stretch early where I think he had 8 interceptions in his first 6 games, which was just going to bring his interception numbers up. But he's 12 total touchdowns and no turnovers since they lost to the Buffalo Bills. So Patrick Mahomes has turned into Mahomes MVP mode since they lost to Buffalo.
Dude, a huge part of what's happened for the Chiefs, like why they feel different, why they look different, why they're winning the way that they are, is just they have stopped turning the football over, and they have started turning other teams over. They have now gone 3 consecutive games with 0 offensive turnovers and at least 1 takeaway. You guys know when the last time was that the Chiefs had 3 consecutive games at any point, regular season, postseason, just a single season in which 3 straight weeks they had no offensive turnovers and at least 1 takeaway. Do you guys know the last time was that happened?
1997, Jimmy Ray and Gunther Cunningham. Gunther Cunningham as the coordinator, Jimmy Ray as the offensive coordinator, I'd say is the last time. That'd be my guess. Final answer.
I have no idea.
It has not happened a single time in the Patrick Mahomes era until the past 3 weeks. The last time that it happened was week 4 to 6 of 2017 with Alex Smith as the quarterback.
Close.
20 years off, but you were right there on.
The closest.
That's what's changed, man. The offense has eliminated those turnovers, and the defense is now turning people over left and right. Did you guys know that the Chiefs defense is now number 1 in the league in points per game allowed?
18 points.
We're going to look back on this and look at the people that had all of this fear mongering and just laugh at it, dude, because it was all nonsense. It was all theater to get us through 17 weeks of the regular season, thinking that something was going to be different this time around. And it just was never true. This was always a team that was going to peak at the right time. And that is exactly what we are seeing right now.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they were always going to do that. But to the level that BK's talking about, this fear talk, the level of concern, the level of criticism they were getting. Because on this show, we talked about it throughout the year of the issues and concerns we had about this team. But when you do look at how many people at a national level, it did seem to be rather aggressive for a team that has had the best record in the sport the entire way. Like there is no point that the Chiefs didn't have the best record in the sport. And they have now won, I believe, 21 of 22. It was a little bit aggressive in not just their issues, but yeah, man, they don't compare to the Bills. I know Buffalo just gave up 90 points in 2 weeks, but they don't compare to the Bills. Hold on, what? Oh, the Ravens, they're the ones that just lost to the damn Raiders at home. Like it was just like, so to the level, I think like for me, I don't know. I didn't know they were going to bring it home at left tackle. I didn't know if they were going to bring it home in the secondary. Right? I didn't know if they had the answers, but there didn't seem to be they're going to figure it out benefit of the doubt that I believe the Chiefs earned at some point from the national media that just seemed to not come until today.
Yeah, and I think some of it is just discounting what the Chiefs have accomplished this season because it hasn't always been pretty. And some of it is just trying to discredit them because of previous success and saying, oh, they aren't winning the same way, even though they're still winning. So they must not be the capable team that we all assume that they are. When in fact, I think a lot of it is also just box score watching. And you're seeing the Chiefs have these close wins all season long, but you're not watching every snap of the football game. You're not seeing the growth within the offense and still acknowledging the struggles of this team. Like tons of people have compared them to the Kirk Cousins Minnesota Vikings from a few years ago that had a bunch of one-score wins, and everybody was like, they're not a serious team. Like, they're not a team that you have to actually worry about. But that was Kirk Cousins. This is Patrick Mahomes. This is Andy Reid. This is a three-time Super Bowl champion team that has won back-to-back titles. It is not the same situation as that Kirk Cousins Vikings team. And that's what needs to be factored into all of this, because Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the world. And even through last season, where we spent a lot of the years being like, do they have it this year? Like, I don't know if they can overcome it. This season, even if we've been critical about some of their performances because they have been frustrating at times, we've all still been like, you can't discount them. You can't assume that they're not going to figure it out, because they've proven time and time again that it's not even about the regular season for them. It's about getting to this point of the year and making sure you are playing your best football at the right time. And the Chiefs are better at that than any other team in the NFL right now.
But BK, it's also about the regular season because they're 15-1. Like, and my favorite thing, and I know your favorite thing, BK, you know what we don't hear no more? Point differential. Right? Have you seen that number? That number is shot up to where only the Bills and the Ravens in the AFC have a larger point differential.
And you know why, Ron? Because when you keep winning, you keep accumulating points in which you outscore your opponents by. Like, even if it's a small margin, it's a margin that is in the positive every single week. And over time, that starts to add up, dude. It was always just so laughable to me, the way that people talked about that. And I'm glad you brought up the regular season point, though, Ron, because to me, the team that you can compare the Chiefs to is the 2018 Patriots. Because I don't know about you, but I did this with the 2018 Pats. And it's different being on the other side of it. Now acknowledging, like, okay, the Chiefs are the Patriots in this circumstance, where they are the team that comes in as the incumbent every single season. And so at the time, I was one of the people that was questioning, like, do the Pats still have it? Are they still that team? The difference, though, is that Patriots team went 11-5 during the regular season, had to go on the road to come beat the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. And so it just feels so much different. Whereas this Chiefs team lost one time all season long. And you're right, Serda, it wasn't always pretty. There were games in which, like, you're right too, Ron. We questioned and we had criticisms of this team. But I think some people just went so far as to suggest, like, not only are there legitimate critiques about the 2024 Chiefs, but, like, this is going to be their downfall. They don't have a left tackle answer. They don't have an answer at number 2 cornerback. Like, it's over for them. The Bills win pretty. The Ravens win pretty when they win. And so those are the teams that are going to once again, like, rise to the mantle. Chiefs are on their way down. And I always thought that was just way overstated.
Chiefs haven't scored 30-plus points. Only the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Giants are the only 4 teams who haven't scored over 30 points. Like, yeah, Kareem Hunt did a baseball slide against the Texans at the 10-yard line to stop himself from scoring. Yes, they weren't going to score over 29 points in the fourth quarter when Andy Reid and company just shut it down. So, yeah, that's the difference. See, the Lions, they're trying to go up for 50. And I remember there was a time when the Chiefs tried to do that back in the day. The Chiefs have no interest in that. It's like, come on, man. It's 29-10. You know what time it is.
We're on against the Texans. Same thing. Chiefs had the ball at the Houston 13-yard line, and guess what? Done. Game over.
Yeah, he took a slide. That's what I said. Yeah, Kareem took a baseball slide at the 10 and just shut it down. Like they could have scored. Like that. I'll tell you what. The one-score game thing. I know the point differential thing gets you. The one-score game thing gets me because they just think 8 is on all these scores are all created equal. There are multiple games in which teams have scored and had to kick an onside kick. Teams have been down by double digits, more than one score, and kicked an onside kick with under a minute left to lose the game to the Chiefs. Like that Texans game was an 8-point game, but nobody in their right mind who watched that game knew that was an 8-point game.
Raiders game earlier this season, same thing. It was 27-13, 2 minutes to go. They score a touchdown, onside kick it, game over.
Yeah, this is like Notre Dame and Indiana, who Indiana was down by 1,000 and they somehow scored a touchdown, got an onside kick and got back down there and scored another one. Like it's so silly to me. But I'm going to say everything you've been talking about, especially the rise of Mahomes, right? Like the Mahomes conversation to me, it's like basketball. Like there can be so many small, like the NBA is having all these issues. And you know, we could talk about the 3-point line, and we can talk about the narrative of load management. We could talk about all these different things that are the issue with the NBA. But the number one issue with the NBA is Caitlin Clark is the most compelling basketball player in the world under 30. And and the NBA doesn't have anybody that holds a candle to her, maybe not even Angel Reese. And that's the biggest thing. The biggest issue is Magic and Bird was able to hand it off to Jordan, who was able to hand it off to Shaq and Kobe, and Iverson, who was able to hand it off to LeBron and Steph. And they don't have that. They need a star. And the biggest thing about all the issues, from the line to the second corner, all of that stuff, when Patrick Mahomes stopped playing like the guy who was going to throw 1 or 2 just poor interceptions a game, which he was just doing at the first part of the year, when he decided to go and say, oh, okay, I'll go be great, this team looked different. And so, I mean, it's all those other things are a part of it. But the big thing is Patrick Mahomes decided to be the best player in the world for the last 6-7 weeks. And that's the big case. And with that, I don't know how you all feel. And I understand through the 18 year where he won the MVP and they, 50 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. And they lost to the Patriots, to the next year when they won it all, to the next year when they got there and lost to the Bucks, and they were an absolute crazy offense with Hill and all of that, to the next year where they lose and they still had a good offense in the 13-second year, to the last 2 years when they've gone back to back. This by far is the best. Maybe by far is a little strong, but this is the best I have felt about a Chiefs team walking into the postseason. Like, this is the most confidence that I have had. Now, I don't know what that means, but it is the most confidence that I have had in a Chiefs team walking into it, because there have been major questions, not just concerns, but major questions that I have had about these teams every year going into it. From that first team I talked about, are they going to be able to string together enough stops? Now, can they get enough stops? What happens if Dee Ford and Chris Jones can't get to the quarterback? And we saw it, and they lost. The year they won that thing, again, defensively, are they going to be able to get enough stops? Still the same with that, right? They did. They made plays. The year after that, the offensive line, are they going to be able to hold up? Nope, couldn't. Mike Remmers is out here starting at a damn tackle. Like, there was an issue there. The next year, weird team. Started off weird. Turnovers all over the place. Mm-hmm. Right? It was a weird group. The last 2 years, my biggest questions were, What happens if somebody finds a way to take away Kelsey? Then what do? Because then it's MVS and it's Juju. Like, what do they do? Never had to deal with that because no team was ever able to do it. But those are the questions. This year, there are concerns. I'm not going to say there aren't. I have the least amount of concerns I have ever had about a Chiefs team walking into it. Because if you take away Kelsey, there's a laundry list of guys that can go and make plays for this team right now. So the defense is great. So this is the most confidence I've had.
I totally get it, Ron. And like the only team that I'm questioning it about, it's interesting because I would not say any of the Tyreek Hill teams because I think this one's more balanced. The team that I would put this one against is 2022 because that one felt like it had more balance finally. That was the year you had MVS, you had Juju, but more importantly, the defense started coming together with all of that young talent. And Mahomes had just this unbelievably efficient season that year. He ended up winning the MVP. But if I'm not mistaken, I think on this very show, I picked them to lose against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game that year. So it's really hard for me to say I had more confidence in that team when I picked them to lose, and I will not be picking this team to lose at any point in time. But some of that is benefit of the doubt because of what's happened previously. So like if you just put up the two teams next to one another, like if you had flipped the seasons, I suppose, and you put this team in 2022 and they faced against that team. And like, I have the history of what the Chiefs have been to support what that 2022 team was, which we didn't have at the time. We didn't have the same amount of history. I would probably say the 2022 team I felt more confident in going into the postseason. They just hadn't earned quite the same amount of the benefit of the doubt. But given that they have now, and I have to account for that, I'm with you, Ron. You've got the number one scoring defense in the NFL. You still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have Andy Reid. The offense is coming around. Xavier Worthy has become a legit weapon. Hollywood Brown, dude, I can't believe how quickly he has emerged as a legit go-to guy on money downs. DeAndre Hopkins had like 2 catches for 5 yards in this past game. And the game before that had a huge, huge role in what they were able to do. So I think the offense is coming around. I have fewer questions about the offensive line, though still some. I think overall, top to bottom, this is the team that I will go into the postseason with the fewest questions about. And yet, I do think that the Bills this year might be the biggest tests that they have had at any point, other than that like classic Bills game that we saw. This is going to be right up there. So I am both very confident in this Chiefs team, and I also think that the field around them is also getting a little bit better in the AFC right now.
Yeah. I think it's hard not to let what the Chiefs have accomplished previously and everything that we've been talking about with, you just can't doubt them. Like they just always find a way and they figure it out. And we know in January when it matters the most, you're going to get the best out of everybody on this team. But I think it's really easy to admit, like, yes, I think this is the most balanced team. Like last year's team was all about the defense, and it was the best defense we were probably ever going to see in Chiefs history. But what the defense has done this season is almost as impressive as what the offense has accomplished, fighting through injuries and having less depth on that side of the ball than they had last season, where it felt like somebody could go down, you immediately have a replacement who can step in and fill that role to the same caliber as whoever is going down. It hasn't been the case this season. But the way the defense has stepped up and the way that they have figured some things out in the secondary, Jaden Hicks looks like an absolute baller. And they're creating turnovers now. Like on top of the offense becoming this total just efficiency juggernaut that is perfectly fine settling in and going on 12 to 15 play scoring drives, as long as it actually ends in touchdowns instead of field goals or turnovers. Like it's hard to see anybody who's going to be able to go toe to toe with them. And then you start talking about the difference makers and all the experience that they have. Like Hollywood Brown only played 40% of the snaps. He hasn't even managed to carve out a huge role, but you already see the chemistry that we expected with Patrick Mahomes coming into the season, where Patrick Mahomes trusts Hollywood Brown when he is on the field, and he's absolutely going to have a huge moment in the playoffs. We know Kelsey will have some moments, Worthy's role expansion, and DeAndre Hopkins being the veteran presence that he is. And then the Chiefs stars stepping up. Chris Jones is going to be back and healthy, I hope, for the playoffs. Trent McDuffie's playing the best football of his career over this stretch recently. Like It's just hard when you start talking about other teams and say, like, do those teams actually have the stars that can go toe-to-toe with this team on top of the coaching and everything that they've accomplished and managed to put together this season? And I just don't think they do. Like, I think it's as simple as that for the Chiefs.
It's crazy that BK, you say that Buffalo might be the hardest test. It is still Baltimore for me.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it's still now because Baltimore's defense is not playing the way that Baltimore's defense's overall numbers say. Their defense,
they've been really good lately.
Their defense is
better recently.
It's just like for me, and I'll say it now. I mean, we'll have this conversation, I'm sure, down the line. Like, I want it to be Buffalo. Like I want to play, but like let's just start doing it. How many like real dudes that can go and make plays? How many of those Buffalo got?
Man, but the funny thing is, I would make the same argument for Baltimore. Like I would say their only real dude on the offensive side of the ball is Derrick Henry, and for Buffalo, like you could make the case for Shakir. I would probably say James Cook is their best offensive player outside of Josh Allen. But really, it comes down to me at least, a question of Allen versus Lamar. Who scares you more in a playoff game? And for me, it's still Josh Allen.
See, for me, I think Josh Allen is the only exceptional player they have. Right, like I think Shakir is.
I would agree with that. I would agree with
that. James Cook is a good player. Ed Oliver's a good player. They just got a bunch of like good to solid players. The Ravens have a dude in Lamar. Like the Ravens have a dude in Derrick Henry. Like those tight ends, maybe they're in those tight ends are as we.
I would put them in the Shakir category of good players.
Okay, and in that range, but then like Roquan Smith is a dude, like that's a dude that can. Kyle Hamilton is a dude, and that damn corner they got, he kind of fits in that category. They just got more dudes that can make plays. Yeah, Marlon Humphrey this year, who I think is going to be a first team All Pro. Like the amount of All Pros they're going to have, like
that's fair. It's a fair retort.
Yeah, right. Like it's just, and not to say that it's just. The Ravens' A game scares me more than any other teams.
For me, and I know this is so reductive because football is about more than quarterbacks, but for me, it comes down to must have a game. I will take Spags going up against Lamar, and Josh Allen just breaks things in different ways. And Josh Allen, like the way that he has played this year has opened up my eyes to that he can play with fewer mistakes. And he would scare me more in a playoff game. It is such reductive analysis because, again, it's about way more than just any one player. But that would be my reason as to why I would favor the Bills. Where do you come out on this, Serda?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
And I do think that Lamar is playing incredible right now and is deservingly should be getting serious MVP consideration. But I think a lot of it is like, He's won it last year. He's won it twice now. It's just Josh Allen's time, and Josh Allen is going to win the MVP in all likelihood. But Josh Allen has been absolutely insane this season. But I will say, like, what Lamar has done as a passer this season is absolutely insane. And it's something like what has always been the criticism of Lamar Jackson, like, oh, he's a runner first and he's a passer second. And when you shut down his rushing lanes and don't let him get outside and try to create big plays with his legs, and you make him try to go toe to toe with you as a passer, that's how you slow him down. That has not been the case this season. He's been tremendous when passing the football this year. And I do think that the Ravens present a bigger challenge. Yeah. Like if we're going star power toe to toe, when you need guys who can go out and make plays at critical moments of the game, the Ravens have more of those dudes. But Josh Allen has basically just been playing unconscious this season. Like he has been absolutely insane. But the Buffalo Bills defense has been a legitimate problem. And this is something that kind of happens with Buffalo every year. Like they always start out really strong on defense. And then by the end of the year, They struggle to make adjustments. Maybe they're a little bit banged up, or maybe it's just simply lacking definitive star power on that side of the ball. And instead having a lot of solid guys to good players that fit their scheme really well. And I think that's going to be a problem in the playoffs for Buffalo. I feel better about the Ravens defense, even though they started the year so poorly, because it does seem like they've settled things down and like they can give you more problems at this point. Whereas Buffalo, I think in the playoffs with Andy Reid's postseason game plans, like I think you can go get after that Buffalo defense in a way that I'm not sure you can the Ravens at this point.
Same thing. Like I think Spags will be able to develop game plans for both, and Andy obviously as well. And but I'd like I would take Spags in a second crack against Josh Allen with the crew he has now, and Josh Allen having to raise the level of other dudes that aren't probably making plays on their own. I think Spags says, give me the 7 third down and 7s or longer that our defense weren't able to get them off the field enough with me. And let's see how that works. Let's see how that works again. So we'll see. I think both of those teams are good football teams. And when I mean good football teams, like great test, I think both of those teams could be right up there with the Bengals that gave them trouble. Tom's Patriots that gave them trouble. I think they both, because they have a player, but I think the Ravens might have a couple of players that you just can't do nothing with at times. And you just got to hope, good things happen. So that's what I think. Listen, all right, man, we've been praising so much of this group, and we should. Hell, they're 15-1, and if they can get to 16 wins behind Carson Wentz on coming up against the Denver Broncos, that would be beautiful. But they're 15-1 right now, and they should be praised. But I know there has to be, because that's how we look at it here on Showing PK. Is yes, there's good, but there's also some things that you got to look at and say, all right, what could be the landmines? What could be the stumbling blocks? And what aspect of this team, I guess we can play with this a little bit, because this next week don't matter. What aspect of this team, as we sit here and seeing them playing their best ball of the season, still makes you a little nervous heading into the postseason?
For me, it's still the secondary, and most specifically corner. Trent McDuffie is playing out of his mind right now. Like, this is the best football we've seen Trent McDuffie play, in my opinion, in his Chiefs career. And that's not just because of the turnovers that he's finally getting to, which he didn't for his entire career and then has one in, I think, each of the last 3 games now. It's just the all-around, everything he's bringing to the table has been fantastic. But Roland Wallace played 67% of the snaps in the last game and looked okay for the most part, but I just don't know how I feel about that in a playoff game. Keith Taylor is now getting every red zone rep for you at number 2 cornerback. I thought Joshua Williams made some huge plays in that game, including the big one down the sideline where he deflected the ball.
Yeah.
And he still only played 55% of the snaps. They do not trust him as the clear-cut number 2 corner. So you get into a big game, whether it's against the Ravens or the Bills, or you get to the Super Bowl and you're going up against the Lions or the Packers or the Eagles, and you've got those big-time receivers you're going up against. That'll be the thing to me that is most concerning, is can you get the stops when they target a cornerback not named Trent McDuffie? Can they mask that? Can Spags overcome that? I think the answer is still yes. I'll pick them to every time they go out there, but to me, that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid, because even in a game where it was easily the Chiefs' most dominant performance of the season, you could point to moments where Najee Johnson's getting beat and looking rough. You can point to a moment where Joshua Williams is out of position. But overall, I've been fairly impressed with Joshua Williams' play when he's getting opportunities in the Chiefs defense, and still makes me question why it took so long for them to go back to him. But I think overall it does feel like they've settled things down a little bit, and to the point where I hope they don't go back to Chamari Connor when he is good to go, because it does feel like that liability in the Chiefs secondary has definitely cooled off and is a lot more stable with him out of the lineup.
And Hicks is better. Like having him on the field is better.
Yeah, and I
100%.
think and I think Jaden Hicks has played his way into that, where there's not really going to be much of a decision about it the way that he has been deployed over the last few weeks here. But I still think it's the Chiefs linebackers. And when you get into the playoffs and you play a team like the Baltimore Ravens and all of the troubles that they've had against tight ends this season, or running backs in coverage or something like that, like, yeah, you're going to get tested on the cornerbacks, but smart teams, really good teams in the playoffs are going to try to force the Chiefs linebackers into coverage. And they've gotten a little bit better here and there, but I still think against the best teams, the best minds in the NFL, you're going to find ways to win those matchups against the Kansas City Chiefs. And Nick Bolton and Leo Chanel and Drew Tranquil has turned things on lately too. I feel like he's been kind of underrated recently after kind of struggling a little bit this season. But I still think that's a matchup that you're going to see playoff teams really try to exploit against the Chiefs.
We'll see with the linebackers. Tight ends have hurt them at times this year, and that's real. And all of, like, we think about those two top teams, you know, Knox and Dalton Kincaid, and then obviously, as you just mentioned, Likely, and then this nut. Who I thought Mark Andrews was done, and then I just saw Mark Andrews catch a pass and separate from Christian Harris, who I think might be the fastest linebacker in all of football, separate from Christian Harris 40 yards down the field on a foot race, and and he never caught him. There was help from a safety, which I did not know. I thought those days of Mark Andrews, I'll be honest with you, I never thought there was a day, even at Oklahoma, that Mark Andrews was running away from Christian Harris. So there's some truth to that. Also,
and Ron, even if you get to the Super Bowl, you got to play against the NFC side of things, like whether you're going up against the Lions, the Packers, the Vikings, the Eagles, like all of those teams have, I mean, if they're not elite, they're in that top category of tight ends as well. So every team you're going up against can have somebody that can give you trouble in that regard.
But just with the tight ends thing in particular with it, because that's the only real thing, the tight ends and the backs with the linebackers, because everything else they're really, really good at. I just think that they are good enough and Spags can do enough to where that doesn't kill them. Right? It doesn't just like it like I will find it hard to believe that the Chiefs struggle mightily on defense or lose a game because the tight end just absolutely murked them, or like, and they never were able to fix that. He'll do something. He'll do something to change it up. Another thing that's happened since we last talked, I believe, is Steven Nelson is a part of this roster too, and he's been kind of getting himself in shape, getting himself going. That's another one to your cornerback situation. Like, that's a veteran player that knows where he's supposed to be, that has played. And last year with the Texans, I would say he has been every bit as good last year than anyone on this team not named Trent McDuffie. So I still think the Steven Nelson thing is in the bag. If he's anywhere near the way he was, like there are just moments like there's I hear your thought. The third and long defense drives me insane. The Steelers converted a 3rd and 15 because Najee Johnson was just doing something crazy. Like the Texans converted a 3rd and 13 with ease. Like, so some of that is annoying me, and I do think Steven Nelson can help that. For me, it is it's the running game. And it's the running game when you take Mahomes out of it. I think he has helped a lot, even with this bad ankle. And I know it's weird. None of us said offensive line. It does, like, pass protection. It does feel like they have a beat on that, and what they've done is good enough. And you can't say it ain't been tested. It's been Myles Garrett, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Danico Autry. It's been Highsmith. It's been T.J. Watt. And listen, I know Jawan Taylor can annoy you, and he had himself several penalties, a good 4 or 5. T.J. Watt is maybe the defensive player of the year and didn't get a single pressure on all the dropbacks they had. I'll press Carrington Harrison. I'll press the button all day long for Jawan Taylor on a bad knee to do that. So, hey, I'll take that. For me, it's the run game. And it does feel like there's a trade-off from kicking Joe Thuney to the left tackle spot and taking him out of left guard to where they run the ball so well on the inside that maybe that has stopped. And I mean, you look at it, last game was the worst. Out, if you take Mahomes' numbers out since Joe Thuney is kicked out, last week's 57 yards rushing, against the Steelers the other day, 57 yards rushing, 91 yards rushing against Houston, and then 118 against Cleveland. All of those games, they had leads. They were running the football. Now, the one thing I will say, a positive note, is they were able to run the football late when the other team knew they were going to run the football. They closed out the Houston game, and Hunt was able to get some some first downs that maybe run the clock a little bit more against the Steelers. So I will give that. But it's a struggle. Like, Pacheco hasn't seemingly gotten himself right yet or not right, but not figuring himself out. We'll see what's up with his ribs, but it hasn't flown right. Doesn't seem like they got the right way to handle those two yet. So the running game to me is something that I'm hoping by the time we get to the end of whenever their season ends, hopefully in the Super Bowl, that this team has improved its run game from where it is right now. Because that seems to be the one thing that has suffered from Joe Thuney being kicked out.
Totally with you. It is. I think you're right. I like the framing that you had there. Was it's a trade-off. Like, if you're going to have Thuney at left tackle, it helps you with the pass pro, but it potentially hinders what you're able to do on the ground. I think especially in these short yardage situations, we've seen that come home to roost. Like, there's been a couple of times lately where it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and they just get stuffed. A couple of weeks ago, the actual running backs, because Worthy's really started to implement himself into this running game as well. The running backs had 27 carries for 88 yards. 2 weeks ago, 20 for 81. This past week, it's 17 carries overall, and it was the worst. It was 47 yards on the ground.
Fellas, like, I didn't know we were going to get into this, but I'm curious because you guys watch it as much as I do. What is it? Is it Thuney and his size? Because I've said this, like, when you look out there, he looks small, right?
Yeah.
He just looks small as a left tackle. Is it Thuney, though, in his size moving out to left tackle, or is it the loss of Thuney as the guard?
I think it's twofold. I think your tackles are better in the running game. Like, Wanya, for all of his faults, he's pretty decent in the running game. Like, if you could just have him out there for running plays, he's actually pretty decent at it. So it's you downgrade there at tackle from Wanya to Thuney. And then the biggest downgrade is Caliendo. Him being in there, I think, is just a massive downgrade at left guard. Like, if you told me right now, hey, BK, you've got to make a choice. You're either going with Thuney and Caliendo, or you're going with Humphreys and Thuney. Who would you choose? I'm still going back to Humphrey for the postseason. I don't know where you guys fall on that.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm making the switch.
You think there's a conversation of moving Joe Thuney out of left tackle?
Not only a conversation, I would just do it. Like, I think he's an all-pro left guard. I think he is more valuable there. I understand the pass pro has been pretty good over the last few weeks. I think Humphreys would be more than okay, and I would go ahead and make that switch. I think that running game is going to be vital in the postseason. I think you give up too much with it, and it's not enough of an upgrade, and people will eventually be able to take advantage, in my opinion, of Caliendo in that regard too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting, and I think if Humphreys is good to go in Week 18, like hopefully we get a long look at him at left tackle. But I also think that there's something to like the trust that Patrick Mahomes seemingly has in Joe Tooney at left tackle that it doesn't seem like he has had with anyone else that has been out there at any point this season. And yeah, you're sacrificing a lot in the run game. And I know that was really important last year in the playoffs. But this short, quick passing game that the Chiefs are deploying right now, this RPO style offense that I think we're going to get a lot of in the playoffs. And this is the Chiefs leaning into just being an efficiency monster on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I think it's really important to just be able to do that and have Patrick Mahomes trust Joe Tooney out there at left tackle and know that like Tooney's going to have things handled. And then you figure everything else out. If teams are attacking Mike Caliendo, like just figure that out along the way.
Man, listen, I hear what first off, I'm really surprised, BK. It's like you're pretty cut and dry. Like, damn, I'd go to it. It is hard for me to shake off and take a chance of losing out at what you've been able to have here of late. And my mindset is, how can we fix this run game? How can we improve it with what we have right now, as opposed to changing it? Hell, I thought you'd give DJ a little bit more time. Hell, I remember you texting us. Hell, he's been as bad as Wanye.
Early on, he got better as the game went on, but yeah, it wasn't great.
And he's bad, and I was like, hey man, hold up, that's a first tough game. Like Joe Tooney. I'm sorry, man. Like we watched Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes in a way that we haven't seen. It is hard for me to take the chance of losing that. That one's tough.
You know, it'd be interesting. They won't do this, but I would be curious if they would give Wanye a chance this week at guard. Like, I think that's more of an off-season discussion than it is something that will take place in season, especially this late in the year. But having him potentially kick inside to guard and take that spot of Caliendo would be really interesting, because then you get a little bit more of that upside in the running game. But it's really more of a moot point, because I don't anticipate them doing that. They've played their hand now. They think Caliendo at guard is their best option right now.
Yeah. Do you think they change playoffs?
Do I think that they will? I do. I think they'll go back to DJ Humphreys at left tackle, and they'll go with Tooney at guard. I could see them though making a switch early if they don't like the returns early on. Like, I know this sounds crazy because it's a playoff game and you never want to take any individual game lightly. I could see them saying, hey, let's see what this looks like for a half. And if it doesn't go well, we'll make the switch at halftime. And we've got this game because we're not playing against one of the Bills or the Ravens to kind of play with in the first half to find out what the best answer is for us at left tackle.
And I do think it's nice to have all of this extra time and all of this preparation, because they can take a long, hard look at it in week 18, and then really over the next couple of weeks after that in practice, see what they have here. And if they believe DJ Humphreys is really healthy enough and it's going to add enough to the offensive line, yeah, I think they'll probably kick Tooney back inside, because they know that how valuable he is there. But at the same time, like, he's played so well at left tackle that it's hard to imagine them moving him back the way that it's seemingly stabilized the offensive line.
That'd be a ballsy move, man. That's a ballsy move to move Joe Tooney off that after how it's looked. So we'll see, man. But hey, number 1 seed, baby. By the way, do y'all care if they go? I ain't gonna lie to you. I kind of care about 16-1.
I do not. In fact, I kind of hope, I think it's so poetic that them losing next week all but eliminates the Bengals from the postseason. I think it's great.
I kind of want 16-1 too.
I think the Broncos are going to beat the Bengals. So I kind of want it. I kind of do. That 16-1 just got a ring to it.
Yeah.
Just got a ring to it.
Looks nice.
God,
And your only loss on the season is to the second best team in the AFC.
maybe third. We are out.